Joining us today is Republican Congressman Scott Perry from Pennsylvania. He's member of House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Transportation, and Infrastructure. Congressman Perry, thank you so much for speaking with Voice of America. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the Voice of America, letting people around the world know what it's like to be free and probably things that they're not finding out in their own countries in many cases. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to start off with a bill you recently introduced, Taiwan Plus Act. The legislation supports to include Taiwan in the NATO plus 5 countries. Can you tell us why you think this is so important and what are other key components in this bill?
Well, some of the key components are some of the timelines and some of the financial restrictions. What I seek to do is to make sure that the Communist Party of China and Taiwan and the world know that we support Taiwan, and we want to give the president the flexibility to support Taiwan militarily by reducing the timeline requirement and by diminishing the reporting requirement or the requesting requirement for additional military resources. So right now there's a threshold that's fairly low where the president has to come to Congress if he wants to help Taiwan from military equipment perspective. So if Taiwan wants to buy some United States military equipment and it goes over a certain threshold, he would have to come to Congress. Of course, that means delays, that means conversations, and all the while, the Communist Party of China might be acting on Taiwan. We don't want that to happen. We want the president to have that immediate flexibility to support Taiwan. We want the Communist Party of China to know that. We want Taiwan to know that we support them by this effort. And we want the world to know where we stand vis-a-vis Taiwan and China. And so those are the general provisions of the bill. NATO countries already have this. And of course, many countries, or well, not many, but other countries around the globe. New Zealand has it, Australia has it, Japan has it. We did it in the past for Jordan for very specific reasons, and so it actually sunsets after 3 years. But right now, while China is rattling sabers and flying into the air defense identification zone of Taiwan at an unprecedented level, we need to send a very clear signal to the Communist Party and to the leadership in Taiwan about where we stand, and this will do that.
Mm-hmm. Recently, we hear a lot of discussions about the possibilities and then scenarios of military conflicts between both sides of Taiwan Straits. And the U.S. Indo-PACOM Commander Admiral Davison recently also said that Taiwan may face military attack from China within 6 years. While there are different numbers about the time frame, my question is, how close do you think this military threat is, and what's Taiwan's strategic significance to the U.S.?
Well, it's as you already alluded, there are differing opinions about what the Communist Party of China's actions, militarily or otherwise, towards China would be, and when, or towards Taiwan would be, and when they might occur. But what is not really in dispute is the Communist Party of China's bellicose actions, militarily and otherwise towards Taiwan. And what's also not in question is that the Communist Party of China oftentimes will take advantage if they see what they view as a window of opportunity where they will not be forcefully opposed in whatever oppressive actions they take. And of course, we see that recently in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, we want to be prepared, and we want to send signals that we stand with our ally Taiwan, and we're prepared to do something about it. It's very important. The relationship is very important to the United States of America and the free world for various reasons. Of course, the free travel and free open shipping lanes through the Taiwan Straits. But not only that, our relationship with not only Taiwan and its allied neighbors with the United States, but allies of the United States around the globe need to know that when the United States says that they're going to be with you, that they're going to be with you, and that they can rely upon that. Mm-hmm. And this is one opportunity where the United States of America can show that in a meaningful way and we need to be prepared to do that.
Pentagon has been calling for Congress to fully fund the Pacific Deterrence Initiative, the PDI, which is included in the NDAA passed last year. How will that help the U.S. to increase the presence and strength in the region?
Well, again, I think what it does is it focuses our attention, rightfully so, on our strategic and tactical adversary, which is the Communist Party of China, and shows the rest of the world, and also shows not only the diplomatic corps, but the defense industry and the business and industry in America and internationally what our focus will be by assigning dollars, by assigning resources to that effort. And so not only is it very tangible, but it's also in another way signaling where the United States stands and what we're willing to do about it. It's again backing up your rhetoric with action, and I think the United States absolutely needs to do that. And I hope that there will be bipartisan support. There's a lot of things in Congress that we disagree with. There are things in Congress that we disagree with the administration on. But in this particular issue, it'd be great if we could stand in solidarity and show the rest of the world that we mean business regarding our relationship with Taiwan and against the Communist Party of China.
A quick follow-up on Taiwan. A lot of people, well, some people actually are worried about provoking China too much may end up hurting Taiwan, as China, one of China's tactics in retaliating against Washington's Taiwan moves is to take it out on the much smaller Taiwan. What's your take on this issue? And you probably mentioned it earlier already, but how committed is U.S. defending Taiwan?
Well, we're going to find out just how committed the United States is by all these actions. We have numerous steps to be taken, whether it's the Taiwan Plus Act or the PDI. We have numerous opportunities to show our solidarity and our resolve with the people of Taiwan, with the free government, the free people of Taiwan. And so we absolutely ought to do that. As far as provoking China, there's always the apologists who say we need to accept strategic patience as a policy, as a strategy and a tactic, but it never works. I mean, you can't tell me one place where it has worked. All you do by refusing to acknowledge and respond to bellicose nations is encourage bellicose nations. And your absence, your silence is provocative. It provokes them to more action. They see weakness and they see inaction. And so it's always not only the apologists in the West that say that argue for restraint, but it's also the Chinese Communist Party and their propaganda that's out there saying, well, the United States ought to restrain themselves. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party wants us to restrain ourselves so they can continue to do what they're going to do. And oh, by the way, to all those people that would take that policy position, regardless of what the United States does, China's going to blame us for it, whether it's responding in kind, whether it's being proactive, or whether it's remaining patient while China continues to be oppressive towards its neighbors, including Taiwan. And so there's no upside. There's never any upside to allowing oppressive regimes, dictatorships, criminal organizations have their way. There's never any upside. You might think you're buying a little bit of time in hoping that the alligator eats you last, if you just continue to feed it. But sooner or later, the alligator is going to eat you. And the sooner you have that realization and do something about it, the better off you're going to be.
Next, let's move on to China. So the Senate now is considering a large investment bill to beef up the supply chain manufacturing and also some technology R&D. Can you share with us what you hear about this legislation, and is that something that you would support?
Well, we've got to know exactly what's in the legislation, and of course, we do want supply chains to come back to the United States. And with all due respect to my friends on the other side of the building and on the other side of the aisle, one of the best ways to do that is to incentivize businesses to come home, as opposed to enforcing hardline edicts. And the best way to do that is through tax policy, regulatory policy. In the last administration, you saw that. Now, it included also tariffs. I'm not a big fan of broad-based tariffs, but certainly targeted tariffs have a key role in that. And taking a really aggressive line on China in that regard has made the difference. We saw success in the last administration. If that indeed was successful, it seems to me we should continue down that road. I'm certainly willing to look at Senator Schumer's legislation, and I have an open mind about it. We want to do everything we can to bring supply chains home. I think the pandemic opened not only America's eyes, but the world's eyes to the malign activities of China, including intellectual property theft and just generally deceitful practices regarding trade, and including supply chains, and trying to crowd out the rest of the market with practices like dumping to make sure that there is no competition. And so I think we do need to be hyper-focused on it. But let's not have a partisan approach to this. Let's have everybody in the room, Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, independents, what have you, because we should understand that on this issue, we should all be on the same side and able to work together and put our differences aside against, because we all should be aligned in policy, in thought and action against the Communist Party of China.
Mm-hmm. Biden administration is actually evaluating a lot of policies toward China. Is there any specific policy you would like to see Biden administration to continue? And how do you assess the early days of the new administration's policy with regard to the CCP?
Well, I would say it's been a lot of talk and not much action. And unfortunately, their appointments, the Biden administration's appointments at cabinet level, you don't have to take Representative Perry's word for it. You can just look at the resumes. Unfortunately, the Biden administration at the very top and throughout is replete with individuals that have strong financial and policy connections to the Communist Party of China. And that's very, very concerning. There are many of these nominees at the cabinet level that, had I been in the Senate, I would not have voted for, specifically for that reason. We can't have sympathetic ears in the administration, or in this administration. We can't have sympathetic ears to the Communist Party of China and their goals. We cannot have a China first policy. We must have an America first policy, which precludes the Communist Party of China. And very specifically, I would think, and I would hope that the Biden administration and this legislature would be interested in taking up my bill, which would list the Communist Party of China as a transnational criminal organization, whether it's pumping fentanyl through our southern border or through the U.S. mail to our towns and communities, whether it's unfair trade practices, whether it's intellectual property theft, whether it's the bellicose actions to allies and friends around the perimeter of China, and the construction of islands for military use. All those things lead to what I describe as a transnational criminal organization. I think that they absolutely meet the definition, and I think we ought to quit fooling around, hoping that the Communist Party of China is going to change its behaviors. Human rights violations. We're literally doing business with the leadership in the Communist Party that puts the Uyghurs in concentration camps, forced sterilization of women in China, and forced organ harvesting. This is no regime that we should be doing any business with. And the sooner we understand and acknowledge that fact, the sooner we can get to making sure that the world knows that, we isolate China, the Communist Party in China, and we start trying to change their behaviors and bring them into the democratic world of nations.
You actually just mentioned a lot of issues that are really concerning: intellectual property theft, espionage activities, unfair trade behaviors, and human rights violations. But what's your biggest concern over China? And do you still see any possibility between the U.S. and China to go back to the good old times?
Well, certainly there's always the possibility, but not while the Communist Party of China seeks to oppress not only its own people, but its neighbors. It cannot be business as usual. I think that throughout the pandemic, what most of America woke up to was what many of us knew all along, that this is a brutal dictatorship. This is a criminal organization that operates leading a country and oppresses its citizens and wants to rule the world. And that is what's concerning to me. That every moment we don't focus our attention on that and take action on that is bad, not only for the United States of America, but for the people that yearn to be free around the globe.
Mm-hmm. One last question. So in a recent report, we see a rising number of hate crimes against Asian Americans, and there are critics who are saying that anti-China rhetoric is fanning the flames of anti-Asian hatred. Do you agree with that? And how to keep up the pressure on the Chinese Communist Party without causing any unintended consequence at home?
Yeah, sure. Every single attack on a citizen of Asian descent, or quite honestly, any descent in America, is regrettable and unacceptable and needs to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But don't be fooled here. This is Chinese propaganda using what happens in America against us. There's no moral equivalency to a free society that tries to and endeavors and seeks perfection every single day and tries to make a more perfect union, ferret out its weaknesses and the people in America that would hate and carry out these crimes. But there's no moral equivalence whatsoever to the communist, the totalitarian, and the criminal regime that again forces sterilization, puts its people in concentration camps, and engages in things like forced organ harvesting. Not to mention the espionage, the intellectual property theft, and all the other things that you already mentioned. No moral equivalency whatsoever, and quite honestly, it's laughable that the Chinese negotiators should bring that propaganda to this world stage and think that it's going to have any place for free speaking citizens around the globe. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And that concludes our interview with Congressman Scott Perry. Thank you so much, Congressman, for taking your time, sharing your insights with us today. We truly appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much to the Voice of America for the work you do. And we're always happy to stand with you here on the Voice of America, especially against the Communist Party of China. Thank you very much. God bless you. Be safe and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good day.